Hello and welcome to part 4 of Superman in Media. This video will detail the history of the sequels to the first two Christopher Reeve Superman films, Superman 3 and Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. After the success of the first two Superman films, production quickly began on a third installment to the series. Ilya Salkind wrote a script treatment for the film, which included villains Brainiac and Mr. Mxyzptlk and Superman's cousin Supergirl. Warner Brothers, however, rejected the script. In this treatment, Mxyzptlk varied from his comic counterpart by using his power to actually cause serious harm to the people, rather than use them for humorous outcomes. Brainiac was also changed, giving him the role of surrogate father to Supergirl, whom he finds in a similar fashion to the Kents finding baby Kal-El in Kansas. Supergirl as well was changed, with her developing feelings of a romantic nature towards Superman. Angry with how the Salkinds had treated Superman director Richard Donner, Gene Hackman flat out refused to reprise his role as Lex Luthor. After Lois Lane actor Margot Kidder criticized the Salkinds publicly, her part in the film was also reduced significantly, to the point of a glorified cameo appearance. However, the Salkinds deny such rumors, saying they wanted to go a different route with Superman's love interest by introducing Lana Lang. Richard Pryor was also cast as a type of villain comedy sidekick, after he said how much he loved Superman 2 on the Johnny Carson show. When the film was finally completed, critics gave it mixed reviews, with fans of the comics delivering outright negative reviews, calling the movie out for its overuse of gags and slapstick comedy, as well as rehashing plot points from previous films. However, the film is often praised for Reeves' role during his corrupted Superman scenes, which saw Superman fall under the influence of synthetic kryptonite, splitting him into two beings, a normal Clark Kent and an evil Superman. This led to the infamous Junkyard fight. Following the mixed to negative reviews of Superman 3, Reeves, along with the Salkinds, believed that the Superman films had run their course. In 1984, Supergirl, starring Helen Slater as the last daughter of Krypton, was released, with Reeves slated to make a cameo in it, but unfortunately he was unavailable. Supergirl was a box office failure, leading to the Salkinds selling the Superman franchise to Golan and Globus of Cannon Films. Cannon Films, infamous for producing low-budget films, thought of Superman 4 as no different from any of the other action films they had produced, with Christopher Reeve saying in his autobiography that the production was hampered by budget constraints and cutbacks thanks to Golan and Globus's notorious penny-pinching techniques. Of the four Reeves Superman films, Quest for Peace fared the worst at the box office, sending the series into a deep sleep for the next 19 years. Christopher Reeve says that he regrets being involved with the film, saying that it was a catastrophe from the beginning to the end. There was plans to continue the series, however, but Reeves' tragic accident in 1995 made the movies impossible to produce. So I don't really know what to say about these two films. They're both pretty bad. I would consider them the worst of the Superman films, or the worst of the Christopher Reeve films in that matter. But they do have both some pretty cool parts in them, like in number 3, the Junkyard fight, which I talked about before. I think that's absolutely an amazing fight, with Superman sort of grappling with himself, and the way Christopher Reeve portrays it as well, like it's night and day basically, how he's this evil guy as well as the good guy, the Clark Kent persona and everything. I thought that was absolutely brilliant what they did with that, and the rest of the movie just don't really understand what they were going for with that. Like, obviously the bad guy at the end, this robot, is kind of meant to be Brainiac, or was meant to be Brainiac, and I don't know whether it didn't come through properly or they just didn't want to do that or something, but it just turned into like a human-made robot and everything. And I thought, like, the whole movie should have been basically Superman affected by the synthetic kryptonite that Richard Pryor gives him, and is basically battling himself, like he becomes his own worst enemy and fights a sort of bizarro version of himself. I think that itself would have been a really good and compelling film as well, especially with Christopher Reeves as Superman. I think it would be absolutely fantastic. But then they have to add in like the coffee bean mogul who's obviously substituting for Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, since he wouldn't come back. It's blatantly obvious. But I think it could have been a really good film if it just stuck with that and did that through the whole film. It would have been amazing. But of course it didn't. And Superman 4 it's fucking terrible. Like everything about it's terrible, and that's because it's a canon film. But as well as because it's a canon film, it's also amazing because if people don't know who the Canon Film Group is, I suggest you go watch a documentary called Electric Boogaloo. I think it's on Netflix, and it's about them, the Golan and Globus guys, making this film studio that just produced like 80s schlock films. Like every film in the 80s that's like a Chuck Norris or a Charles Bronson film, they made, and they made billions off of this, and it squandered it and all and everything. It's absolutely amazing documentary. It's just people go watch it. But yeah, it's blatantly obvious, like the production value on this film is laughable. I remember Christopher Reeves gave an interview where he said, like, in the first film, if they were going to do something with the UN, which they did in number 4, they would have actually shot it at the UN on 42nd Street and everything. But in Superman 4, since like it was so tight budget and everything, they shot it in like a back alley behind an industrial state. Like, that's how like bad this film is, and it is so bad. I don't know how they got Gene Hackman back though. They must have offered him millions of dollars somehow. No idea how they got him back. But yeah, it's absolutely horrible film. But the beginning of it is actually really cool. The part where Clark is back on the Kent farm, and he's thinking about selling it, but he wants to hold on to the farm. Like, that's really cool. That's really cool stuff. And if they'd ran with that, I think it would have been a really cool film. But then we got Nuclear Man, who's a budget bizarro, and John Cryer playing Lex Luthor's nephew, I think, and he's this weird sort of 80s punk, and he's got this weird car and everything. It's absolutely like outrageous. It's just like, you don't think about this in the Superman film. It's insane. But both do have scenes that are good, but they don't obviously help the overall movie be good, and that's really sad. And these two films essentially killed the Superman brand for the better part of 20 years. So yeah, it took a long time for them to recover from this, and they still haven't really fully recovered, and I'll talk about that in later segments. But overall, yeah, these films are not good. But anyway, thank you for joining me for another part in Superman in Media. I hope you enjoyed it and found some interesting tidbits in here. I know I did when I was researching these films. And yeah, keep an eye out for future installments, which will include stuff to do with Superman video games, animation cartoons, Superman Returns, of course, TV shows. So yeah, keep an eye out for that here on Fortress of Solitude.